Welcome to the second part of the Stop Doing That special about Ayrton Senna, a Formula One driver who people really need to stop worshipping. My name is John. I am the author of the What Happened Here series, a series of books about terrible things throughout history. And I'm here with my good friend Andrea.
Hello, my name is Andrea, pronouns she and her. I am his transgender history friend who he has dragged along to this. I am
Indeed,
being held against my will. Please save me.
you can't. No one can save her. She is
Damn.
doomed to listen to my ramblings about very strange things throughout history, such as Ayrton Senna, who was a very strange man. I think we can say.
I think so. I think in the end of our last episode, I came away considering him to be a dick, but
Yeah,
one that is wholly expected out of Formula One racing. So I'm interested to see whether I'm going to like him or loathe him by the time he meets his eventual fate.
uh, we'll we'll see. We'll see. There's some good stuff in here, I will admit, but there's also some stuff in here that is also not great. So I mentioned in the last episode that one thing the film likes to mention a lot is that Senna gave lots and lots of money to charities. I just wanted to go expand on that a little bit further. He got requests like constantly from charities and just random people in Brazil just asking for money for this or that. And he always donated just without a second thought, basically. But they got so massive that he wanted to start an organization to organize these donations, if you will. For what it's worth, he made a lot of these donations apparently in secret, and they were massive donations. I couldn't find a source for this, but apparently he gave away about half of what he earned. So that was around $100 million. And I will
Okay,
say,
that's actually pretty impressive. I mean, $100 million is not small change, and the fact that I mean, sure, we are both first world people, but like Brazil has its troubles. So to hear that he's supporting so much of that with a lot of money that could do a lot of good when converted to, I believe it's the real, but don't hold me to that. Um, Brazilian local currency. That's actually really good of him.
yeah, it's certainly a lot better than something like Jeff Bezos donating $2 million and getting a bunch of news articles, and it's like there's a brief moment where you're like, okay, $2 million, that's good, and then you remember that's how much Jeff Bezos makes in like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and he's getting all these news articles about it, whereas Ayrton, he's doing it privately, and it's a genuinely sizable amount of what he earns. It's not even for him; it's a lot of money. So that is good that he did that. One thing, though, the film also does not mention, however, at least I don't think it does, that's also good, is an incident in 1992. Senna was on a flying lap, that being, he was at full pace. I think it was in practice or qualifying, one or the other. And his fellow driver, Eric Comas, crashed violently directly in front of him. Senna could see that the crash was big, and Comas's car was stuck in the middle of the track, and he could see that Comas was not moving. So Senna stopped his car and ran onto a live racetrack. Cars were like dodging him to get over to Comas's car and try to help him. He could tell Comas was still his car was still running at full revs because he was unconscious and his foot was stuck on the throttle. So Senna ran to his car and hit the kill switch on the car so that it didn't burst into flames. Comas credits Senna with saving his life. So that is another good thing that he does. There's video of this happening. So there's video of him running to the car and stopping it. It's
Now I feel kind of bad about calling him a dick. I mean,
well,
he's got an ego, but he does actually have like
he is
a decent
capable.
side to him.
He is capable of decency. He is capable of being a decent human being. Um,
Unlike your mother,
well,
that's
okay,
incredibly true. Incredibly untrue. Incredibly untrue.
very untrue. All right,
I I have met your mother.
John.
Is a wonderful person.
Yes, she is. Yeah. Um, anyways, so aside from that, in 1992, the McLaren did not live up to expectations. While the Williams Formula One team had built a monster of a race car, it used active suspension, which balances the car perfectly for each corner without the driver needing to do anything. Computers preset what to set the suspension to and would just do it. The driver essentially just had to operate the pedals and the steering. To this day, even though this car was built 30 years ago, this might be the most advanced race car ever built. Britain's Nigel Mansell won the world title easily with this car. Senna had no chance against it. He took issue with the car too because he felt as though he felt that this direction of the sport would make it more about technology and not enough about raw driving ability. Essentially, it would be more about the car than the driver. Following this, Mansell retired from Formula One after winning the world title, and he went to America to race in IndyCar. His replacement, a certain French driver that Senna was not fond of.
Before we move on, I was attempting to process why I knew the last name Mansell. Um, and I remember now. Um, Scott the Woz is borderline forever.
Yeah. He is a he has
It's
that.
referenced in the opening song of Borderline Forever.
Yeah, he references the I don't know NES
Uh,
game that Nigel Mansell sponsored or
yeah,
whatever, something like that.
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
So I think that's the show's first Scott the Woz reference.
it won't be the last. Don't you worry, listeners.
And listeners, if you're going, what the fuck are these two people on about? Let it stay that way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So Alain Prost knew that Senna might try to go to Williams at some point, so he had it written into his contract that he was never to be teammates with Ayrton. Senna, predictably, fought hard to get out of his contract with McLaren, knowing they didn't have a car that could win championships. He still won a couple races in 1992, but championships were the top priority. It didn't help that Honda pulled out of F1 after 1992, forcing McLaren to replace them with Ford V8 engines. In 1993, Senna put on some of his greatest performances. He won multiple races and took second in the championship with a car that could barely keep up with the Williams. At a damp Donington circuit, Senna went from fifth to first on the first lap of the race in what was considered to be one of his greatest moments. He passed both Williams cars, Prost included, to take the lead. He would go on to win the race and be presented with a trophy shaped into, and I'm not fucking with you here, Sonic the Hedgehog. Yes, Sega had a deal with Williams that year and also sponsored this race, which is why this happens. You can find a picture of it, Senna lifting up the Sonic the
Oh,
Hedgehog
I'm
trophy.
looking for it right now. I've got a picture of Williams racing with a large Sonic the Hedgehog character in costume.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I believe also that, like, they had
Oh,
what McLaren did that year was whenever they won a race, they put a little squished hedgehog sticker on their car to like kind of tease Williams about it, I guess. Yeah, it was
oh, it's a really good it's a really good trophy. I like that trophy.
it is. I know there's a bit of a search to try to find where it is. I don't know if they found it or not, but it's that's been something that's
Well,
been
here's an interesting discrepancy because I'm seeing one Sega trophy that has Sonic one hand on on a small trophy and the other hand held down at the side.
hmm.
But I'm seeing a different picture of Senna holding the trophy, where Sonic's free hand is held up towards his face. So I'm having to wonder which one is the real trophy.
Could be that they gave one to Senna and then maybe another to like the team or the sponsor. I know they typically do that in racing. They like will make multiple trophies. They'll like give one to the driver, one to the team, one to the sometimes one to the main sponsor for the car. That could be what's going on there. I don't know why they would choose a
Fair.
different design, but that is a bit strange.
Yeah, I am also now seeing a picture of someone um this appears to be a different race, but having to hold like one of those place positioning signs as like they're readying to go.
Yeah,
But dressed in just like a god awful Sonic the Hedgehog costume. I'm going to throw this in the
yeah,
episode.
yeah. The
You
original.
have to see this shit.
Oh my god! Now that's the '90s right there. That's the fucking '90s.
The things women used to have to put up with.
I hope that woman's doing well today. I hope she
And to
doesn't.
some extent, we still fucking do.
I mean, yeah, yeah. Also, interestingly, Senna's teammate in 1993 at McLaren was Michael Andretti, the son of Mario Andretti.
Huh.
After a successful career in IndyCar, Michael gave F1 a shot alongside Senna, and it went horribly. He crashed frequently. He actually crashed on the first lap of the Donington race, although his actual pace was fairly close to that of Senna's. He later said that McLaren didn't really take him seriously because he was an American and came from a partially oval racing series. Ironically, though, Michael said he got on very well with Ayrton. Um, he would leave McLaren before the end of the season to return to IndyCar, but he did manage one podium finish at the Italian Grand Prix. It kind of
Oh,
really
that's actually pretty impressive.
it kind of really fucked up IndyCar's reputation overseas because the mindset was, well, your best driver came here and he sucked, so you guys all suck. F1's better. Um, F1 fans have a tendency to be very elitist when it comes
Uh,
to,
yeah, yeah, I've
unsurprisingly,
certainly obtained that feeling.
yeah. While Senna did have a very good season in '93, some even consider it to be his best season, it was not enough. Alain Prost won his fourth world title and retired on the spot. And that meant an open seat at Williams, and Ayrton took his shot. It tested his relationship with Ron Dennis and the friends he had at McLaren, but they understood it was the name of the game. It did get pretty extreme, though. Senna apparently demanded to be paid $1 million a race and threatens to not drive if the payments didn't go through. Yeah,
And here we go back to him being a dick.
yeah. In the season finale of 1993 in Australia, Senna won his last race with McLaren, the 41st victory of his career, then left for Williams in 1994 to replace Alain Prost. Also worth noting, Ayrton actually repaired his relationship with Prost in 1993. They weren't best friends or anything, but they were able to at least tolerate each other's existence. And with Prost not racing in 1994, it would stay that way. But Ayrton had more problems ahead. F1 bans the technology that made Williams so successful, making the car harder to drive and not quite as competitive. It was still good enough to compete for wins, but it was immediately apparent that Benetton, a smaller team with a young German named Michael Schumacher at the wheel, had the better car. Senna continued winning pole positions. By this point, he had more than anyone in the history of the sport, but he couldn't find the top of the podium and struggled to keep the car under him at times. There were several races where he spun out because he just couldn't control the car. This all made Senna conspiratorial again. He believed Benetton were cheating by continuing to use the electronic aids banned after 1993, particularly the traction control system, which stops the wheels from spinning. He begged Williams to file a protest, but they never did. At the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, which is in Italy, Senna took pole position once again, hoping to reset his season. Onlookers said they'd never seen him so tense and irritable on a race weekend, as he continued finding the car unpredictable and unbalanced. Ironic, as that's kind of exactly what he wanted. He wanted them to be harder to drive so the drivers could show more of their skill. This was exactly that. He said he didn't like the electronic aids, but I don't know. It just comes across as a bit hypocritical, I think. He was also worked up about his suspicions that Benetton were cheating. Another part of why was he had already been talking to Ferrari about leaving Williams at only a few races into the season. He was already talking with Ferrari about going there and just leaving Williams entirely. Also, on top of all that, apparently his family didn't like his new girlfriend, who who this time was above 18, as far as I can tell.
Thank God.
He learned that bit. He learned maybe I should date someone around my age and not a high schooler for once. Anyways, it wasn't like he wasn't trying to win. Senna had an insane work ethic. He learned everything there was to learn about each car he drove. His test driver at Williams, David Coulthard, once recalled being brought in to do a session after Senna hurt his neck in a crash. Senna was still there for Coulthard's session so he could get David's feedback, something the driver had not seen from any other driver he worked with. He just sat there and tried to listen to whatever David Coulthard had to say about the car. But this weekend at Imola was dominated by terror and tragedy. On Friday, fellow Brazilian Rubens Barrichello suffered a vicious crash that many thought would be the worst-case scenario. Fortunately, he came away with only minor injuries, but what the film does not mention was that Barrichello's tongue got stuck in his throat, forcing
Oh,
it forced Sid Watkins to jump in there and pull it back out. He would have died if not for Sid Watkins.
um,
Ayrton,
for those who don't know, though it's fairly obvious. One, that's not a thing that the human tongue is supposed to do,
not at all.
and secondly, for those who happen to know a bit of Eastern European history, specifically around the Chechen conflicts between Chechnya and Russia, you'll recognize that doing that is something that someone has to take great effort in doing
Yeah,
as a form of execution.
yeah. I believe also, I think I also heard that this also happens to Eric Comas. I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean, you can see how it would happen. Because if you look at Barrichello's accent, it is horrible. He launches into the air and hits the tire wall at a really,
Oh,
really high speed, and the car just stops upon hitting the wall.
oh,
And as Jeremy Clarkson put it best, speed never killed anyone. Stopping quickly, that's what gets you.
yeah.
Uh,
Look back on some of our episodes about football
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
to hear discussions of what that does to the human brain.
yeah, not good things. Not good things at all. It won't do good things for the rest of this weekend at Imola either. Anyways, Ayrton was deeply upset by the crash and went to go check on Barrichello in the care center. Barrichello was up and walking pretty quickly. It seems like he wasn't really hurt aside from, the whole ton thing. Once that was sorted out, I guess he was mostly all right. And it wouldn't be the worst thing to happen that weekend. Austria's Roland Ratzenberger crashed hard in the qualifying session on Saturday. As his car came to a stop, his listless head was the first thing everyone saw. Medical crews went to work, pulling him from the car and checking for a pulse. When the cameras showed them performing CPR, it was clear this was as bad as it could be. Within hours, the announcement came that Ratzenberger had not survived. Senna was distraught. He apparently wept into Dr. Sid Watkins' shoulder. There was even concern that he wouldn't race on Sunday. While he and Roland weren't close, he was still a fellow racing driver. A human being was taken away doing the same thing Ayrton did for a living. This was the first time Senna and many of the other drivers had experienced death on a race weekend. Like a couple of drivers had died during Senna's career, but it was usually like in testing accidents, not during a race weekend with Senna being there to see it. So this was completely new for him. During a tearful conversation with Sid Watkins, Sid remembered that he and Senna loved fishing and proposed a question. Quote, Ayrton, you've been 3 times world champion. You're the fastest man in the world. Why don't you quit, and I'll quit, and we'll just go fishing? Ayrton didn't think twice. Sid, there are certain things over which we have no control. I cannot quit. I have to go on. When Sunday came around, Senna rolled onto the grid, maybe fearful, maybe not. Certainly the day before had sobered him, but he didn't let it stop him. A deeply religious man, he consulted the Bible on what he should do. It told him that apparently that God would give him the greatest of all gifts, and that gift required him to race, and so he did. And of course, being this was F1 in 1994, there was a huge accident at the start of the race when a car stalled in their grid slot. Nobody was hurt, but there would be an extended cleanup period. During the caution period, Senna weaved around his car to keep the tires at their optimum temperature, or higher temperature means more grip. He waved at the pace car to speed up so he could warm his tires up even more. And when the race resumed, he pulled ahead of Michael Schumacher. The German pressured the Brazilian as best he could. On the 7th lap of the race, Senna entered the fastest corner of the track, Tamburello Corner, which he could take flat out. Then, spontaneously, Senna's car veered off the track and speared the wall nearly head-on. As his car spun around and eventually stopped, debris raining around him, Senna's head was also listless. Ayrton was pulled from the car, and the medics got to work. But Sid Watkins knew right away there was nothing that could be done. He saw obvious signs of a traumatic head injury, the most common cause of death for racing drivers. The very same thing that killed Ratzenberger the day before. Watkins claimed that at one point Senna sighed, then relaxed completely. He believed at this moment his spirits departed. Senna was airlifted to a local hospital and the race resumed. Michael Schumacher won, but no one celebrated, because not long after the news came through that Ayrton Senna, F1's fiercest competitor, had died at 34 years old. It's still not known exactly why Senna's car veered off the track. As he went through Tamburello, a shower of sparks was seen exiting his car. The most likely theory is that the tires had cooled and lost pressure during the yellow flag, which made Senna's car bottom out violently, redirecting his car to the right. Some believe the steering column broke, and indeed it did break, but it's uncertain if it broke before the impact or as a result of it. No one will ever know for certain. But what killed Senna ultimately was bad luck. The angle of impact and the harshness of it caused the suspension to smash him in the head, dealing a fatal head injury. He had no other injuries. If the suspension had missed his head, it's likely he would have survived. In his car, an Austrian flag was found. Senna intended to wave it after the checkered flag, in honor of Roland Ratzenberger. On the flight back, the Williams team said nothing to each other. Williams engineer Adrian Newey, widely considered the greatest race car engineer of all time, could barely function. He questioned whether or not he wanted to keep racing, and still blames himself for the crash. Of all the drivers he's worked with, Ayrton Senna is the only person to die in one of his cars. He and his team spent hours rewatching the footage to try to figure out what happens, just re-traumatizing themselves just over and over again. Newey believes that a cut tire slowly bleeding air, probably caused by Senna running over debris during the yellow flag, made the car bottom out. The rear end snapped around violently. Senna overcorrected when he tried to stop it. Although he thinks it's also possible the steering column might have broken after the car started sliding, which would have kept Senna from pulling the car away from the wall. Regardless of the cause, the F1 world was shattered, as was Brazil. 3 days of mourning were declared, and 1 million people lined the streets as his coffin was carried by on a fire truck. Virtually everyone who saw it was in tears. There are a lot of images of his coffin being carried through the city. It is the only thing I can compare it to is maybe almost like when JFK was assassinated, where he had his coffin being carried through DC, just hundreds of thousands of people just lining the streets to watch it. It shows just how important Ayrton was. At his funeral, his coffin was carried by his fellow drivers. This included Alain Prost, who later said he felt a part of him died with Ayrton. Sadly, Ayrton's fame also completely overshadowed the tragedy on Saturday. Roland Ratzenberger was all but forgotten about. Current F1 fans and drivers can tell you exactly where they were when they heard the news. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, for instance, said he was at the karting track and was told by his father of Senna's death. While his father worked in the kart, Hamilton found a place alone to weep, then put it aside, got in the kart, and kept going with his Formula One dreams. In 2011, Hamilton would get to drive Senna's MP44 McLaren on Top Gear, and said it was one of the best days of his life. Something also not mentioned in the film is that Adrian Newey, his colleague Patrick Head, and team principal Frank Williams faced manslaughter charges in Italy as did several track officials. The law at the time in this country was that accidental deaths don't exist. If someone dies, someone is responsible, unless it's old age, illness, or suicide. Roland Ratzenberger's team was not charged, which points to this being some kind of stunt from the Italian courts, be able to say they put the men who killed Ayrton Senna behind bars. Even Senna's family said the trial was a disgrace and that Williams were not responsible. Eventually, the defendants were cleared. Then, 3 years later, they were retrialed. Then again after that. All three times, the verdict was not guilty. After Senna's death, the sport went to Monaco. Williams only entered Damon Hill as teammate. In practice, Karl Wendlinger had a horrific accident that left him in a coma, in which he hit the sharp edge of a wall and the car went from about 100 miles per hour to nothing in an instant. Again, that's not good for the human brain. So F1 came within a hair of 4 deaths in 2 weeks. As such, the FIA made changes to the cars and even to the tracks in the weeks after, particularly by reducing downforce and adding more corners to the tracks to slow the cars down. Williams eventually got their car sorted out somewhat enough that they won the Constructors' Championship. Nigel Mansell returned from IndyCar to win the season finale for them in Australia. In that same race, Michael Schumacher took the Drivers' Championship through already discussed controversial circumstances in which he intentionally crashed Damon Hill. By the way, for what it's worth, Adrian Newey also believes Benetton were cheating. Make of that what you will. Damon Hill would go on to win a world title in 1996. His teammate Jacques Villeneuve won it again the next year, and Williams has not won a world title since. Many wonder what would have happened if Senna had the dominant Williams cars in 1996 and 1997, and even the latter stages of 1994. That we will never know. The film closes the way it started, with Ayrton talking about his karting days and how they were the best days of his racing life, that it was pure driving, with no money and no politics tainting it. It then says that after Senna's death, Professor Sid Watkins became the leader in improving safety in Formula One. At the time of the movie's release, there had not been a death in Formula One since Ayrton. Sadly, that has since changed with the death of Jules Bianchi in 2014. The film closes by claiming that the Instituto Ayrton Senna, set up by his sister Vivian in 1995, has educated over 12 million underprivileged children across Brazil, and that Alain Prost is a trustee in the organization. And with that, we will now, I guess, break late and enter the conversation corner. Somewhat sad note, I suppose.
Well, so to keep us on the topic of South American news, um, my first element for the corner this week, um, Javier Milei,
I think it's Malay. Malay.
Milei, um, leader of Argentina, has, well, he's brought back a specter of when we were originally considering what to do for a podcast. Listeners who don't know, which should hopefully be all of you, one of the original ideas that was batted around was a show about Margaret Thatcher,
Oh no.
reviewing the life and the leadership of Margaret Thatcher from a distinctly very anti-Thatcher position.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we would have eventually had to cover was the Falklands War.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Millet wants to do the Falklands War 2. This time Britain doesn't have a military.
Oh my god. So he's just challenging Britain to a war.
Yes. he has openly stated that the Malvinas were, are, and always will be Argentine. Um, and he is trying very hard to goad Britain into a war because he knows that at least this time the United States may at least like sit it out instead of actively backing Britain.
I mean, yeah, they might. I could see Trump saying, this is that's your problem, Britain. You deal with it. But also, like, it has to be Melee trying to distract from something, right? Like, it has to be.
Oh yeah, no, he's completely obliterated the Argentine economy.
Yeah,
Um, because for those who don't remember, he was elected because I believe he's a libertarian,
he's like a super
and
libertarian. Yeah,
he was like, we're gonna be like a crypto first country in South America. And it's like, no, dude, no, that's not how that works. You can't just you can't just claim that you're going to be South America first, South America's first like all crypto nation.
also, he got beaten to the punch on that. El Salvador did that.
Well, that is true. That is true.
Yeah, El Salvador has like a big Bitcoin reserve. I know because their president is similarly completely fucking insane. He is just off the wall nuts. So my topic for the conversation corner is more just something I witnessed today that I thought was very interesting. Um, so without doxing ourselves, the town near where we grew up that has a Panera Bread, correct?
Yes, yes.
And how connected to that town there was a road which takes you to a bridge. It's the one that's very flat. The one that's a very
Oh yeah, yeah.
flat bridge.
Now I know. Now I know the bridge.
Yeah, yeah. So I would just say that bridge has a drawbridge. In the 23 years that I've lived here, I have never seen that drawbridge activated until today.
Huh.
Yeah,
Neat.
it was just a little boat, it was just for a fairly small boat that just went through there. Um, so I thought that was interesting. I always wondered, is that thing even still active? Do they even still use the drawbridge portion of it? And apparently they do because
Well,
today,
yeah, because there's another undisclosable industrial site just up the river from there. They I believe they have barges that come through.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just that I'd never seen it used in 20 plus years. So I was sort of wondering.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
So I was sort of wondering, is it even still active? But I can't but wonder that must be a great job because this like a little office above the drawbridge where I guess you operate it. It must be a great job because you just get to sit there and occasionally open the drawbridge and then let it close, and not much else. So that's just what I
I
saw.
do have yeah. I do have one final item. In between us recording something else earlier today and recording this episode, I did mention that we've recently had the trend of sprinting through the Scientology building, the main Scientology building, um, as a speed run. Um, well, now now they've taken that this is taken to being a trend. Um, Scientology is just I don't know plotting that maybe they'll just do a violation of the fire code
Oh boy.
because they have removed the exterior door handles
Yeah, I think I did see that. That's not safe. That's not
and
safe.
apparently are bike locking the doors from the insides.
God. I remember many years ago I went to Los Angeles and I saw I don't know if it's like the main church for Scientology. It wasn't any of the ones I've seen in these videos. It was like an actual separated building. All the ones I've seen in these videos are like a building like in a city connected to other buildings. This one was like
Was it the big blue one?
I don't remember. I think I remember it was like tan. It was like a,
Oh.
or it was sort of like a, I think like a, I don't know what the color is, like beige maybe. Um,
Hmm.
it was in, it was like near Hollywood. I know it was like near the Hollywood area. Um, yeah, I wonder if anyone's broken in there yet. They got see if they can see if they can run into Tom Cruise while they're in there.
Well, not to spoil the next episode too much, but we we may be running into a figure from Scientology a little bit.
Oh, great! That sounds
Yeah, they're
fantastic.
gonna get a mention at least once in the episode.
I feel like we could do like a 4-part series just on Scientology alone.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you I have a couple of ideas. Um, Listeners, I have an upcoming vacation, which in which I'm hoping to obtain sources on a different religious cult.
Oh boy,
So you can believe that I'm going to be doing some episodes on religious cults.
I thought that I always do love hearing about that sort weird cults or whatever. They're always
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
interesting.
It's now defunct, but there is actually close to my redacted location a the remnants of a religious cult.
Actually, I will say uh, the next episode I will be doing is going to be tied into sort of culty religion kind of stuff. So
Fun.
yeah, exactly. With that, I think we should get back to the last part of our story about Ayrton Senna. This is more of kind of a, I guess, like an editorial section where I'm going to answer the question: Was Senna, was Ayrton Senna the greatest racing driver of all time? Like everyone says. Now that we've seen both the fiction and the truth, um, I think I can answer that question for myself. It's very difficult to compare drivers from different categories of racing. For all we know, maybe if Dale Earnhardt Jr. decided to leave NASCAR, maybe he would have taken to an F1 car exceptionally well and won 7 world championships. Probably not, but we simply have no idea how talent from one discipline transfers to another. For listeners who don't know as much, a NASCAR stock car and a Formula One car, aside from racing on different circuits, handle completely differently. The things you're doing in one car are in no way similar to the other. For me, the answer to the question of who was the greatest driver of all time would be someone who was not just exceptional in one type of car, but in every type of car. F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, anything with wheels on it. And that would be someone like AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, Jim Clark, uh, Tazio Nuvolari, or Juan Manuel Fangio. Probably names that you don't really know, Andrea, but a lot of
I was gonna say those are some names.
they are indeed some names. Um, and Senna never really did much outside of Formula One. He made one start at Le Mans and tested an Indy car for Roger Penske's team. But those were both high.
Wait, hang on, hang on. This is a total diversion into Roger Penske.
Yes,
Same Penske as Rental Trucks Penske?
correct.
Huh.
Yeah, that's his. That's where he makes a lot of his money, and he also runs the most prominent IndyCar team, and also runs the IndyCar series, and also was a one of the major donors to the Trump campaign. So
Fuck.
yeah, fuck him personally. Um, the thing is, The cars Senna drove were mostly high downforce cars on road courses, not too dissimilar from what he did in Formula One. But had he lived, we might have gotten an answer to this. Senna was curious about racing at the Indy 500 and in NASCAR. When he tested the Indy car, he apparently liked it so much that he did consider leaving F1 to leave in the US. If he's alive today, maybe he gives oval racing a try and succeeds. Or maybe he doesn't. The few times an F1 driver has gone to NASCAR, it hasn't gone all too well. For instance, Juan Pablo Montoya won the Monaco Grand Prix, also won the Indianapolis 500 in IndyCar, then went to NASCAR and could never win on an oval. He showed flashes of brilliance, but he never reached the same level as the top drivers. The difference between the two series was just too much for Montoya to take in. There's also Scott Speed, no relation to Lake Speed, as far as I'm aware. He also made the switch from Formula One to NASCAR and did not have really any success. Even Jenson Button, a Formula One world champion who raced multiple times on the road courses in NASCAR, which is that's his wheelhouse, is road course racing, he usually ran near the middle of the pack. Another world champion, Kimi Raikkonen, did a little bit better than Jenson Button did, but even he was still off by a step or two. Maybe Senna would have broken the trend and dominated in America, but we'll simply never know. But to summarize how I feel, the greatest driver of all time, in my opinion, would be able to go from winning an F1 World Championship to a NASCAR Championship to a World Rally Championship without skipping a beat. Could Senna do that? I'm not confident. So, if he isn't the greatest racing driver of all time, is he at least the greatest F1 driver of all time? For me, the answer is no. In fact, I don't even think he was the best of his generation. Prost, in my opinion, and the opinions of a gradually growing number of his contemporaries, was a better driver than Senna. Maybe not as exciting to watch, but what Prost did worked. And qualifying is not all there is to racing. Hence why Senna had 65 pole positions, but only, I suppose, 41 wins, while Prost had 33 pole positions to 51 wins. This is Senna's most damning statistic, which really shows how shoddy his ability in an actual race could be. His pole to win ratio is poor among the greats of F1. Lewis Hamilton had 104 pole positions to 105 wins. Michael Schumacher had 68 pole positions to 91 wins. Niki Lauda had 24 poles to 25 wins, and Max Verstappen, probably Senna's closest comparison, 48 pole positions to 71 career wins at the time of this writing. Basically the inverse. And with how hard it is to overtake in Formula One, winning pole position is the best thing you can do if you want to win a race. You pretty much either have to have a mechanical problem, an issue in the pit area, or screw up somehow to win pole position and then not win the race. Or someone just has to flat out beat you. And Prost did that to Senna more than a few times. Even in terms of speed, Senna had drawbacks. While he was faster than anyone in qualifying, in an actual race where the cars aren't set up as aggressively and you have to worry about other drivers, Senna's pace fell off a cliff. The record for the most fastest laps in a race in Formula One history is held by Michael Schumacher with 77. Lewis Hamilton is second with 68, and Alain Prost is fourth with 41. Max Verstappen is sixth with 37. To find Ayrton, you have to go all the way down to 16th, where he is tied with several drivers with just 19. A tie he shares with some relatively unimpressive drivers like Mark Webber and Valtteri Bottas, both of whom were number two drivers, i.e., essentially there to support the actual great driver that the team has. They were never world champions. Lando Norris, the current world champion, who is younger than me, is only one fastest lap away from tying Senna on this mark. And never once did Senna have the most fastest race laps in a season, but Prost did in 1988 and 1989, where they were both in the same car. As a teenager on sim racing, I tried to model my driving style a lot after Senna. I learned the various tricks he did and tried pushing the car as hard as possible. You would see me, if you could go into my bedroom and see me sim racing, you would see me counter steering and just sawing at the wheel every single second, like because that's what he was doing. But now I try to model my style more after Prost. Prost never countersteered, he never made mistakes, to the point where it was almost like watching an AI drive on a video game. If you watch his onboard footage, it's quite trippy almost to watch. He doesn't make mistakes. Every single corner he's just turning in, he makes it look so easy. And while even if he was a bit slower, he won more races and more championships than Senna did. And I don't care about it being exciting to watch. I care about results. And Prost got them. When it was time to race, he was the best in the business at the time. I wouldn't even say that Prost was the best ever either. Schumacher, Hamilton, Verstappen, and Fangio, who was a driver in the 1950s, could all be argued as being better than both Senna and Prost. While it's hard to pick one, I would personally choose Fangio as being the best ever across all of racing, and then probably Lewis Hamilton for Formula One, for being the best ever in Formula One. To explain Fangio, I guess briefly, he was a very nice guy who dominated F1 much more thoroughly than Senna did in the 1950s, which is an era where if you crashed, you simply died. Prost has also made it clear that he thinks the Senna movie is absolute horseshit. He thought even less of the Senna biopic series on Netflix, which he called completely fictionalized. I've not watched the series, but it seems clear that it similarly portrayed Prost as a demon and Senna as a holy figure. Prost largely remembers Senna fondly, saying that he thinks mostly about their relationship in the last 6 months or so of Senna's life when they patched things up. The film does mention that they did repair the relationship. It doesn't really say why they did. From what I can tell, it seems to have been over discussions about safety in Formula One, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And that's one of the things that makes Senna a legend for people. He had so much more to do. In just 10 years, he went from a nobody to an all-time great. That doesn't happen much in racing. He was already considered the best ever by many drivers when he died. It wasn't just something that happened afterwards out of mourning, whatever. His career, in comparison to many drivers, was very brief, and yet he did so much. Just to give people an idea of it, Max Verstappen has now had a longer F1 career than Senna, and he's barely older than either of us. He's only I think he's 28. So I don't dispute that Senna was an incredible talent. He had some abilities that come along only once every 20 years or so. I can certainly agree that he was the best qualifier of all time, probably the best wet weather driver of all time, but that isn't all there is to racing. And I can absolutely understand why he's so popular, especially in his home country. If I were in poverty and dealing with a horribly corrupt government, like the one we have currently, I would also latch on to anything that distracts me from the man-made horrors of the modern world. Something that gives me hope. Something that makes me feel like life is worth it. There was talk that Senna might have become the president of Brazil at some point, and he honestly probably could have. Now, whether he should have is another thing, but it speaks to how
I
popular.
I personally I personally think that a man that letting a man who can solve all problems by driving really fast around a set track should be the president. In fact, I think that's the way that we should be deciding all governmental leadership positions.
I have
Is that we should, maybe not spend the entire amount needed for like an F1 car, but say a modestly priced hatchback,
a Renault
perhaps.
Twingo.
Yes, perhaps even a star in a reasonably priced car.
I had kind of like tossed around the idea in my head for many years now. I never seen like a, I don't know if it was a manga or an anime that was like all decisions in the world were decided over games of mahjong. And I was thinking, how about a world where all decisions are decided over the world are decided over motor racing, and the actual world leaders have to be the ones in the car.
Actually, now that I think about it, that may just be the plot of the Wachowski sisters Speed Racer movie, which we will have to watch sometime. I've been
Perhaps,
told that it's actually not half bad.
perhaps, yeah. Um, yeah, I would very much support all of our world leaders having to go star in a reasonably priced car and get berated by Jeremy Clarkson for like 10 minutes before driving around like a
And
complete
then
moron.
perhaps we can leave Jeremy Clarkson out of this. We'll find someone else.
We'll replace him with who's a good suitable replacement? Not James
John
May.
Oliver.
John Oliver. Yes, John Oliver. Perfect. Um, or Eric Andre, maybe. But he does a lot of crypto shit now. Maybe not.
Aww.
Yeah, he's taken a turn.
I hadn't checked in on Eric Andre in a while.
He's taken a weird turn. Um, yeah, but regardless, anyways, behind Pele, Senna was probably Brazil's greatest sporting hero. But whether he was the greatest driver or not, we can't pretend that he was a god. He was not what would happen if Christ decided to possess a race car driver. He was a mega talented dickhead who couldn't race others with the most basic level of respect. And dating a 15-year-old when you're 25 is horrific. And while I guess it doesn't impact it, while it doesn't impact his driving abilities, it does inherently make me disgusted by him and not respect him in any capacity. Senna's reputation has taken somewhat of a downturn in recent years, partly because, well, people are Googling Ayrton Senna 15 a lot more and finding out that he was a sick fuck. But also, he has faded more into F1 history, and the raw emotion from his death has kind of dissipated. And so people are kind of starting to see him more for what he really was. Simultaneously, F1 fans are just kind of getting sick of the constant worship he gets, mainly those like me who were not around while he was alive. Still, as a mediocre sim racer, Senna is someone that I can't say I admire or want to emulate, but definitely someone I look towards for guidance on racing, not dating. Absolutely not dating. The man had abilities that very few of us will ever have. His qualifying laps are like Da Vinci paintings, and I'll admit I watched them a lot. And his ruthlessness, while it certainly went over the line at times, it did win him a lot of races. He also has undeniably had an influence that almost no other racing driver has ever had, even if I don't think that influence is necessarily good. Senna merch is still everywhere. When F1 goes to Brazil, the crowd still chants his name. Most of the current F1 drivers cite Senna as their childhood hero. His horrific method of overtaking is now the meta in most motorsports. When I look through the entry lists for motorsports around the world, Ayrton is not an unusual name. And Senna's nephew, Bruno Senna, went on to become a driver himself and briefly raced in Formula One. He didn't have the same success as his uncle, but he did keep his family involved in racing through his career. And even today, if a Marlboro McLaren F1 car, or something based on it, appears in a racing game, it will invariably have that same yellow helmet with green and black wrapped around it. And that probably won't change anytime soon. And that is the story of Ayrton Senna. Andrea, what did you do? You like him more after all that?
I I like him a bit more.
A little bit.
He has certainly shown himself. I we've seen the best and the worst of him.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can certainly sympathize with the people who would say that he was perhaps gone a little too soon.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting to think about, if he were still, I do think about it a lot, if he were still alive, what would his career have been like? What would he be doing
Yeah,
today? Um,
it harkens my brain back to, my episodes on Preston Tucker and the thoughts of, you know, what would be different were they permitted to continue doing what they did.
yeah, it's sort of like it was definitely like a sort of a fork in the road kind of moment when he died. Um,
Yeah.
you really do think about.
I will say I certainly also was not expecting it to be before his death to be before the halfway point of the episode.
Yeah, I, yeah, I had a lot of, admittedly, I kind of had to go with a bit of a rant there in the end. That's just how I am.
Yeah, it's necessary.
Yeah, I want to give kind of my opinion on the whole debates. Um, because again, even today, most F1 fans you ask, who was the greatest driver of all time? Pretty much all of them will still just say Senna, without a second thought. And I don't know, maybe I just have a contrarian streak in me, but I wanted to express no, I don't agree with that. And I think you should stop worshiping him as a god because it's not what he was. Like, just to give you an idea of kind of how powerful he was, there was I remember hearing a story and we'll wrap up the episode in a moment. This is the last little anecdote. I remember hearing a story about a guy who was a journalist for ESPN who had worked with Ayrton quite a bit, who had interviewed him quite a few times. He went on a cruise ship, and there were a lot of Brazilians on that cruise ship. And when word kind of got around that he had met Ayrton, that he'd been friends with him, just dozens and dozens and dozens of people were coming up to him to shake his hand and talk to him just to get kind of a have a piece of Ayrton in a way. He described it essentially as that it was like he had shaken hands with God.
Yeah, that certainly sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah. So with that, Andrea, do you have any hints you want to give us for the next episode, perhaps?
Certainly, certainly. As I noted earlier, we we may be getting a visit from a certain member of the Church of Scientology. As next episode, we're going to be going to one of my well for a better use of a better term, my wheelhouse.
Oh boy.
We're going to be talking World War II. We're going to be talking boats. And we're going to
Yeah.
be talking failure. Lots and lots of failure.
There was a lot of that in World War II, definitely. So, if you're interested in that, please join us next time on the Stop Doing That podcast. I am John.
See you then. And I'm Andrea.
Yes, you are, and we'll see you soon.